So let's start with the biggest one, Russia and Ukraine. So last time I talked about Russia and Ukraine was when Putin was winning. He annexed four territories, Donbas region in Donetsk, Luhansk, as well as Zaporizhia and Kherson oblasts. And afterwards, there was a disastrous retreat as well as announcing partial mobilization. So it went from special military operation to partial mobilization. What does that mean? It means Russia is serious now, and Ukraine is always winning for some reason. And even though it's winning, it's always asking for more weapons to the West. USA has sent about $100 billion to Ukraine. Wow. And now Germany, after a lot of resistance, has agreed to provide Leopard tanks to Ukraine. UK is providing Challenger tanks to Ukraine, and USA is sending M1 Abrams to Ukraine for this upcoming Russian operation or invasion. And when this mobilization begins, fighting. And let me put it this way, it's not going well for Ukraine. Not at all. So, so Russia, in few days ago, captured a small town or city called Soledar, and there has been intense fighting between Russia and Ukraine in for a cap for capturing a city called Bakhmut. Bakhmut. Just type in that in Twitter and you'll get all kinds of tweets about Bakhmut. So Bakhmut is this industrial city, and Zelensky is treating it like Stalingrad. It's supposed to be his Stalingrad. When they fight, they make their last stand and they turn the tide of war. Well, it is turning into a Stalingrad, but not in the way Zelensky wants. In Stalingrad, Russians and Nazis fought really, really hard, and eventually Russians win. Russians won that city, and Nazis had to retreat. Well, in Bakhmut, Ukrainians and Russians are fighting really, really hard, and Russians are starting to win. Russians have surrounded Bakhmut, and soon they will capture Bakhmut, and the tide of war will turn against Ukrainian Nazis. Now, Ukraine has a Nazi problem, but it's not as big as the original Nazis. It's a little bit complicated. Uh, It's about a guy called Stefan Bandera, and who was like anti-Stalinist, pro-Nazi, pro-Ukrainian nationalist type figure. And these Nazis are kind of the same. The white supremacists. They hate Russians, but they are also Slavs, which is strange. I don't know how they solve that dilemma. I don't care. You might have heard about the Azov Battalion, AZOV. There are a lot of these battalions that are fighting in Ukraine. Ukrainian army is gone, just gone. So who is fighting Russians? It's Ukrainian citizens who have been forced to fight Russia. It's all these different battalions, and it surprisingly NATO forces in Ukrainian uniform. Yes, they are fighting Russians, and so far Ukraine's casualties are upwards of 100,000 people. Few, I think months ago, month, 2 month, 3 months, something like that, the EU's leader Ursula von der Leyen accidentally revealed that figure, and If I can find that video, I'll link it here. So 100,000 Ukrainians are dead, about 30,000 are missing it, and they're probably dead as well. And Russian casualties are probably in tens of thousands of people. This is not going well for Ukraine. Putin underestimated Western response. That's why he that's why he called it a special military operation, because it was not a full-on invasion. It was probably supposed to be some kind of salami slicing tactic to annex few territories from Ukraine, because Ukraine was bombing them in the Donbas region, Donetsk and Luhansk, and Putin will annex those and as well as bully Ukraine and stop it from joining NATO. That is now out of window. And soon Bakhmut will fall, and Russia will probably go after Kherson back again. Because remember, Russia annexed four regions: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. These four oblasts. And Donetsk and Luhansk make the Donbas region. If Bakhmut falls, then Donetsk and Luhansk are secured in Russian territory. And same goes for Kherson. Kherson falls, Kherson is secure in Russian territory. What happens to the rest of Ukraine? Well, there are four outcomes. First one is what West fears, or many of European countries fear, that Russia will go for Poland. It seems unlikely, but we don't know. Putin has announced a full, was it Putin or I don't know, Russian government has announced full militarization, not in Ukraine but long term militarization. So their military is now going to be much stronger than before. After this war, Russian military will be far stronger. Just pick up the phone. So the Russian military will be far stronger, and maybe they will go into Poland next. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Second outcome is Poland and Russia divide Ukraine. Russia will take eastern half and Poland will take western half. Ukraine as a nation ceases to exist, and it seems likely solution, but if Russia doesn't capture all of Ukraine, then they will be provoked once again by Western Ukrainians into attacking them once again, because their territory was just annexed by Russia. Why would they not try and attack again, get stronger? So there's that. The third outcome is NATO escalation. So NATO is in proxy war with Russia. That much is obviously clear. NATO is sending weapons to Ukraine. All Europeans and USA, they're sending weapons to Ukraine since the beginning of the war. And even before the war, they were arming Ukraine. And there are rumors or many reports of NATO forces fighting in Ukraine in Ukrainian uniforms. So this turns it from proxy war into a proper hot war between NATO and Russia. That means nukes are on the table, and things will get really ugly if NATO decides to escalate after Ukrainian defeat, eventual Ukrainian defeat. And the fourth outcome, what is the fourth outcome? I think this fourth outcome will be most likely outcome, I would say. and that is Russia annexed all those territories into proper Russia and turn Ukraine into some kind of republic, like Republic of Chechnya. It, it will be given some level of autonomy, but it will be under Russian control, sort of like Chechnya. And I think this outcome is the most likely outcome at this point if NATO doesn't escalate. Because Ukrainians are going to try and attack Russia, even if they lose war. Afterwards, they will try and attack Russia, and the West will send weapons to Ukraine to attack Russia again. The West will not take this defeat lightly. And the only option is to stop flow of weapons into Ukraine from Poland. And for that to happen, Russian forces need to be at the border of Ukraine and Poland in the western side of Ukraine. And I think that will be the most likely outcome. Russia will annex the Russian speaking parts of Ukraine. These four territories they will maintain that they annexed, and they will maintain that into proper Russia. They will integrate those republics into proper Russia, and Ukraine will gain some kind of autonomy. Things will get ugly. And this offensive of the mobilization was supposed to come in winter, but this but the last year and also this year, winter wasn't as harsh in Europe as winter is usually in Europe. So that offensive did not happen. The ground needs to be solid for Russian offensive. Otherwise they'll get bogged down and get stuck in the mud, and just like the Nazis did when they invaded the Soviet Union. And though that will create a lot of logistical challenge that Russia does not want. And therefore, when the ground is solid, Russians will attack. And that it's supposed to be in spring, starting maybe in February, maybe. And that's why Ukraine is asking for all these tanks. The M1 Abrams tanks will take months to arrive in Ukraine because US doesn't have those tanks. They have to manufacture those tanks, and they have to send those tanks to Ukraine. So it will be Leopard tanks, German tanks, filled and used by all these battalions and Ukrainian forces, all these Banderites, Nazis against Russians. History repeats itself, huh? And here's why. And I, I discovered this. I think the thought came in my mind to be more precise. That the reason why Russia is afraid of NATO is because of their history with Napoleon and Hitler. Europe has invaded Russia multiple times throughout the century. It's 10 plus, and all these countries have been. Poland has invaded, Sweden, England, but the biggest ones came from continental Europe to Russia when the continental Europe was united under some leadership. First time the continental Europe united was under Napoleon, and that was a disaster for Russia. Russians won in the end, but it was not pretty. Uh, Lights have gone out, and now I'm stuck. Great, great lighting, great lighting. Should I continue this right here? You know what? Screw it. I'll continue it this way. Uh, so the first time continental Europe attacked Russia was under Napoleon, and second time that happened, it was under Hitler, and both of those were really terrible for Russia. And now third time NATO is attacking Russia indirectly through a proxy war in Ukraine, via Ukraine rather. And I think things will get ugly for NATO if history is to repeat itself. Because when Napoleon and Hitler united Europe and then they attacked Russia, they lost control of all of Europe. Maybe the same thing will happen to NATO. Maybe America will lose control over all of Europe after this war. Maybe. Unlikely, but the chances are more than 0%. Let's readjust that a little bit. Uh, okay. So this was Russia and Ukraine in a nutshell. What will happen? Russian victory is almost inevitable at this point unless NATO just joins the war. There are about 100,000 NATO troops stationed in Poland and Romania. Most of NATO countries are not excited for this war at all. The ones that are most hyped for this war and the ones that are pushing really hard for this war are United States, United Kingdom, Poland, Romania, and maybe the Baltic states. But Baltic states not that much. And even in Poland and Romania, I don't know if public shares the views of the governments or supports the action of their governments. They they definitely dislike Russia. That's for sure. Polish people and especially Polish people, they really dislike Russians. But do they want a war? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. So Russian victory is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. Unless NATO escalates, then things will get really ugly for both Russia and NATO. Because who who's stopping either side from using nuclear weapons? Both sides have nukes.